Restaurant Unstoppable episode 700 with Mario Del Pero. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you back on the show for a second time, Mario Del Pero. Mario, my man, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Eric, when asked that way, it's really hard not to feel unstoppable. But to be honest, so since this is my second rodeo, and I really appreciate getting to come back and be on your show. I think a lot about what some people are good at what they do, but what truly makes individuals unstoppable. And I really don't think unstoppable is a feeling. It'd be so temporary, right? I really believe unstoppable is a mindset, and it's a mindset based on so much preparation. So am I feeling unstoppable? Yes, but it's beyond the feeling. It's in the mindset.
Yes, I love it. It's so true. And I think the first time I asked you that question, you said something along the lines of this industry. It's so ironic that I named Restaurant Unstoppable, because in this industry, there's so many things that can stop you.
That's
and
right.
To have that mentality, like I'm unstoppable.
Yeah.
Like none of these hurdles, which I will come across on this journey, are going to stop me. And you have to have that. It's like that. It flips that switch in the frontal lobe of creativity where nothing can stop me. I'll find a solution, right?
Yeah, I think that you end up having a collection of tools.
Yes,
that allow you to overcome challenges that you're facing, and for that matter, it's so not an individual sport; it's such a team sport too. So I definitely have a lot of thoughts around how you get to be unstoppable, and don't necessarily know that that's for the individual. It's for the person that actually knows how to create a great team. Yeah.
And just for you listeners at home, if this is your first time hearing the name Mario Del Pero, make sure you go back to episode 414. I'll link to it in the show notes, but Mario was one of my earlier guests, halfway through a middle range guest. And what I'm trying to do going into the future, one of these aha moments I had is I don't need to get new relationships. I just need to go deeper on the relationships I have. And that's exactly what we're here doing today. I'm going back to the people who really left an impact on me. And Mario, you were one of those people. Great interview. I highly recommend you are a great guest, and no pressure to show up like you did last time. But go back to episode 414, get caught up, because we're going to pick up today's conversation where we left off, and you won't regret it when you do. But
should I have listened to episode 414?
Nah, you're good. But in case you're not listening to my advice, I'll fill you in on who Mario is. Mario Del Pero grew up in his family's meat processing business. He would go on to study international relations at the University of Southern California and was on the path of becoming a career lawyer. Instead, he took a job at a Mexican grill where he started as the barback's back. Eventually, he became the director of operations at that Mexican grill. And in 2005, Mario, along with his wife, Chen, opened Mendocino Farms Sandwich Market in Southern California. 15 years later, they have grown their business. And the last time I had you on the show, you're around 17 or 18 locations.
Yeah.
Where are you today?
33.
And this is
crazy.
2.5, 3 years ago.
Just broke 100 million in sales this last year at the end of the year. And average unit volumes last time we spoke were maybe 2-3 million, or now 4 million.
Oh man,
crazy!
Well, I can't wait to find out how you guys did it, and that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about how you guys did it today, what you've learned since our last chat. And I left that intro really doesn't do you justice, because we dive into all the other things you had going on in between working at the Mexican grill.
Yeah. Feels like 5 lifetimes ago as you're saying it. I'm like,
so
I don't even remember college.
I can't emphasize going back and listening to episode 414. Okay. Before we dive in, like always, it's a tradition here at Restaurant Unstoppable. Let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Success quote or mantra. One that really kind of resonates, that I obviously say so much, that my first director of operations, first operations partner, we gave him equity in the company, actually got it tattooed on his arm. And let me tell you, it was not small. It was his entire forearm. And it was my quote, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. I'm pretty sure that I stole it from A League of Your Own. Jimmy Dugan said it. But it continues to resonate when with hard times, to just remember that, we're in a place where that growth can be mitigated, right? We're up to the task.
Yes.
And then the other one that completely stays with me and has been a theme. It's been a theme of so many of the processes and tools that we continue to practice at Mendocino Farms, and I continue to practice personally. But that would be, literally the name of the book. But the quote, "Good is the enemy of great," from the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, and I think it really resonates in what we were just talking about. That so many people are really good at what they do. But how few are actually unstoppable?
Yes.
And I think that there's real lessons that can be taken from that.
And I think greatness comes from that first quote, which is, if it was good, everybody would be doing it. And I think that there's this reoccurring theme I see in a lot of consultants that are out there, people who are like drinking the Kool-Aid, trying to say like, oh, this is how you become rich. This is the secret to this. There's a lot of truth to it. But at the same time, I think there's this culture in America right now where like, it's not a good thing to work in your business, right? Where like it's almost like the hard path will get you to the place where you can eventually work on your business. But becoming great, I think, is also like putting the work in and like getting to the point where you don't want to sit on a beach because you love what you're doing so much, or you're leaning into the hard work, right? Like there's this mentality of like, if you're working, you're doing something wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you agree with that? Or
well, look, I've had a lot of time to reflect, about kind of how Mendo has gotten where it is today, and for that matter, how I've gotten to where I am today. Just in the last few months, my co-founder and I, stepped down from the day-to-day of Mendo after 15 years. And of course, the first thing is what's next. But I think just pausing and asking myself, before what's next, how did we get here? And this last few months of really, thinking about how that happened. And then in the same time, obviously there's been, horrible tragedy, here in Los Angeles, but to have ripples globally. And that's Kobe Bryant's passing.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it feels. We're in LA right now recording this, so I can only imagine what the feelings are like echoing throughout this community. So I'm sorry to hear about that loss.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, for his family and all the other people, and I by no means, attest to being a student of Mambo mentality. But we've definitely gone back and listened to some podcasts and watched a lot of documentaries with both of my children, who are really excellent athletes, but pretty thoughtful humans, and the takeaways definitely resonate in some of the takeaways that I've thought about on how Mendo's gotten to a certain spot. And some of the things that just jump out for you is if there was three big takeaways from listening to all of the different documentaries, the first one was outwork your competition, right? So this idea of Kobe getting up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, why? Because no one else was willing to.
Yeah.
Right. Working out even when he was traveling and not going out and partying, right? And I think it's almost to outwork your competition is just table stakes. Right at this point, particularly even in the restaurant space. So I think you have to work hard. But to your point, I think it's even more important if you were to look at what allowed Kobe to be great is to work smart and to outstudy the competition. They went into detail that he would watch game film, but he was specifically with no ego. I mean, he had plenty of ego when he got on the court, but with no ego, would watch, his opponents and the footwork and to see if he could create an edge, or if they did something special, if he could replicate and improve upon it.
Yeah.
And I think where it's lost often, with in the restaurant space is the people that and the groups that have really become unstoppable, are able to really go in and study their competition, right? And really be, I'd mentioned being a student of the business. I think I'm going to take it one step farther. I think you need to be a professor of your space, right?
It never stops, right?
And
The learning
really
never stops.
looking, at that, for that inspiration, the innovation, the small little details.
Yeah.
Breaking down the packaging that a competitor might have, or how they're handling third-party delivery. And then the last one that has resonated, and I don't know if I would have pulled it had I not been in this place in watching some of these documentaries, is truly Kobe's loving the pursuit of being the best, right? This idea that he wanted to play against the best team with the best competitor, right? Because he knew that it elevated his game, and he desired that.
Yes.
And I look at some of the people in the restaurant space, and I'll hear things like, them doing non-competes, trying to keep every one of their maybe competitors away from doing business against them. And you have to start to ask yourself, why? Are you not good enough?
Well,
right?
That's the other thing. But also, it's like your responsibility to empower the people around you so they can go on and do something. Like that's the kind of the natural order, is it not?
Absolutely. I mean, a great mentor of mine, John Mackey, truly believes that his competitors are actually stakeholders in his business.
Yes.
Because they allow them, force them to continue to be better and to innovate. And I truly believe that taking those elements from the Mamba mentality. So look, you have to ask yourself in a real restaurant terms, what's the recipe that I think, creates Unstoppable, or what helped Mendo, get to where it is. And it's not necessarily replicating, but I would say, number one, I remember finding not being a student of the business, but really being a professor. You know what I mean? Really going in deep, analyzing, understanding not just your menu, but where your competitors are, and where necessarily they're going, and more so what your guest needs. Not necessarily always what your guest is asking for, but what your guest needs, and to be able to lead, in that way. And there's so many brands that I continue to be inspired by. Well, many would go, oh, they're competitors. And I'm like, no, they're stakeholders in Mendo. I truly believe Sweetgreens is a stakeholder in Mendocino Farms. They continue to offer to their guests, not necessarily things that are asked for, but things they believe they need. Their level of supply chain and trying to figure out how to scale it.
Well,
right?
I mean, you the first quote that comes to mind is that Ford quote where if I gave the people what they wanted, I would have given them faster horses, right?
Right.
But people don't know. When people are so close to the thing, they don't know what they need.
That's
and
so
by
good.
nature, humans are reactive. We react to what's going on around us. We don't get that outside perspective sometimes. So when you're a professor, you see the big picture.
That's right.
People don't even know what they need, but when you're studying it all the time, you get that different angle, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. Actually, I mean, just a comment. Nicholas, one of the founders of Sweetgreens, had made a comment like, "Our guests didn't ask; they just came out with a kelp salad. Our guests didn't ask for a kelp salad, right?" But in fact, it really aligns with our values. It aligns with sharing with them, new ingredients, but in a craveable way.
Yeah.
But more so, it's the bigger meaning is we're doing a chef collaboration with David Chang, right? And really sharing with people that might not be able to experience David Chang's food, definitely not on a daily basis.
Wait, are you doing that collaboration as well? Because I was at Sweetgreens earlier in the week because I actually had the founder, his name's escaping me right now, obviously.
Yeah, no. The founders of Sweetgreens are Nathan, Jonathan, and Nicholas.
Okay, I actually had it was Tender Greens I had a show. It was Eric Oberholzer. That's the name.
Oh my God. So, I mean, Eric is one of my soul brothers. like one of my great friends in the industry, and definitely a thought leader.
You mentioned something like we think of ourselves as professors, right? But I think we also have to think of ourselves as neighbors, because these are your competitors. But at the same time, they're your best friends.
Yeah.
And it's that, and whenever I think this is something I see all the time, like when my travels around the nation in the past 2 years, right? We talk to people and they say, oh, like that group, those successful restaurateurs are a clique, and it's impossible to get into the clique, or do you just see them as a clique and you haven't tried to approach them yet? You know what I'm saying? Like, usually these people are where they're at because they are open with their knowledge and they are neighborly and they are warm, and they are generous, right? Do you want to reflect on that? Not so much?
No, I absolutely will. So I will say from being someone that is friends with the people that you just described, that it's not a clique. that all of these individuals are so absolutely open, and I believe that many people in their old ways of thinking would assume that every good idea that any of us have is a competitive advantage of which we would never want to share with anyone. And I think that there's been a group that kind of came up. We all kind of came up in the last 15 years of people that are like-minded and believe that all of these good ideas are really open source.
Yeah.
And really actually we need each other to elevate. So why I said, Eric and I are close on multiple reasons, but one of the things that people didn't know is for years and years, Tender Greens and Mendocino Farms shared vendors. We shared supply chain ideas. And we did so because it helped both of our brands, because it helped these farmers have enough volume to be able to service both of us better.
Yes.
So it worked. So I love that idea of neighbors, right? But I think going back to the thought of being a professor is, I think that not only do you have to be a student, but from being a student, you can then be an innovator, right? It's not here to just copy, right? And there's plenty of, you can go and see brands that are just ridiculous Sweet Greens knockoffs or horrible Tender Greens knockoffs. Literally using the same plateware as Tender Greens. But to truly study from these brands and then make it your own. And I think that by being a professor, right, that you're able to then write that new thesis. And I think it's important to innovate in that way. And then the other two, things that came from thinking about what the unstoppable mindset was surrounding yourself with a team and partners that complement you. And I think that I was definitely earlier on in my career, and we've obviously scaled so much since then. I have such a massive appreciation for my co-founder, Chen, and how much she really led the company and played so many different hats that she was far better at than I ever would have been. Likewise, some of my greatest aha moments have actually come from bringing senior leadership in that really had watched maybe not this movie, but other movies play out, and were able to bring that kind of knowledge, to the group on how to scale and how to do it in an effective way. And I think that when I look at what is that unstoppable recipe, right? It's not necessarily an individual, but it's great teams.
Yes.
And then the last one is evolve or die. And I think that so many restaurants, have a good one store, good maybe 2 or 3 stores.
I love that you're so close to the mic that you're moving it, because I told Mario, get
You
as
did.
close to the mic as possible, and he's listening to my advice.
I'm literally almost eating it. Yeah, no, it's
Keep going.
I'm tickling it with my tongue. Anyway, so at the end of the day, I think a lot of brands forget they rest on their laurels and don't continue to evolve. And some of these iconic brands that I've been able to get really close to see, it's not necessarily always seen from the guest perspective, but they're in constant evolution. You go and look at a brand like Cheesecake Factory and how they've been able to sustain
until
how
recently,
great
too.
they are. Just until recently. But
Sam Fox, right?
is that crazy?
We'll talk about always evolving,
Right.
Cheesecake Factory, big, massive corporation, right? The enemy, quote unquote, some people might say. But at the same time, look, they're looking and they're turning around. They're looking to the all-stars, right?
Yeah.
These people that the homegrown heroes, right?
Yeah.
And they're tying their brain to those people like Sam Fox, like the king of Phoenix in the restaurant scene.
Probably one of the most thought leaders leaders in the nation as
Yeah,
far
so
as innovative concepts.
If that's not evolving, I don't know what is.
Yeah, no. But even prior to that, but yes, that's a great example of a type of company and why they would do that. But that was already in their DNA. If you go and look at the amount of evolution from training around the food, the processes that they've brought, the talent that they surround themselves with there, it is no doubt, right?
Yeah.
It's not luck that Cheesecake's had the success that it has.
I think we're going to transition into that scaling because that's where we left off. I have one question before we transition.
Please.
You're talking about professors also need to be innovators. What happens once you've innovated? What do you do with that information? Obviously, you apply it in your own business, but does it end there? Do you share it beyond your own business?
Well, I think that there's lots of fields and lots of ways, to innovate. Yeah. So I wouldn't just put it, down to the R&D team around culinary. So we're obviously sharing it with the world. So anyone else that wants to come taste the food, I'm not necessarily I'm not necessarily sending recipes, to Eric at Tender Greens, right? But I'll tell you what, a great vendor, or a great artisan product, we will share, and we do want to promote it, because again, it continues to help this greater ecosystem, right? This greater neighborhood and community that we're building. But there's so many other places to innovate that people forget. Around training, probably the greatest. And training involves everything, as I said, from recruiting, right, all the way to what is the ongoing training?
Coaching.
How do we coach? Our team. Are we innovating in that? And then I will say that innovation is in all the different processes and continuing not to put processes on top of processes, but the evolution of processes as you get bigger, right? And asking yourself these really big questions. How do we scale our culture, right? So when I think of innovation, I think that there's massive opportunity to continue to share innovative pieces with like-minded restaurant groups, because at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do is something more than just put some money in our pockets, right? Dude, it's to create incredible experiences for our guests, right? It's to bring neighborhoods together and create neighborhood gathering places. It's to elevate people's lives through craveable food and enlightened experiences. So all of those things, right, feed this way bigger deal than just like. Gosh. So to be able to share that with like-minded restaurant groups, like you would be off mission. You'd be unaligned with your values to not want to do that, right?
I am squirming in my seat right now, man. I'm loving what you're giving me. I'm tempted to go someplace, but I'm going to save this for later because I feel like it might serve us better later in the conversation. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, I want to pick up where we left off, and we're kind of we're circling around that conversation right now. The last thing we discussed the last time you were on the show were three. Let me scroll my notes real quick. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Sorry. 3 buckets that you identified as how to scale culture.
Okay.
Right? Those 3 buckets were recruiting and assimilating the right team.
Yeah.
The second one was living the rituals. And the third one was coaching. I think we got pretty good into recruiting and assimilating the right team. We pulled layers back on that. So again, listen to episode 414. Some questions on living the rituals. You started sharing some of the rituals. Why are rituals so important? Get into that. Dissect that for me.
Yeah, I mean, let's take one step further back. I often hear, as you probably do, we have a great culture. You're like, I'm not quite sure I've ever run into a business that wouldn't say they either have a great culture or inspire, like want to have a great culture.
Yeah. Or the other thing is they point at what they wrote their culture down as. This is our culture.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on over here?
Do you see the quote we have on the wall?
Yeah.
Right. In HR.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Or in the manual. First cover of the manual. Yeah. So one of the things that my business partner Ellen Chen and I, first did, this is early years, was ask ourselves like. What is culture, right? And we came down to, we boiled it down to like 2 items. The first one is how a group of people talk to one another.
Yep.
And then the second piece is the rituals they practice.
Okay.
So those two things divide. If we think about any culture, you can bring it into other things, but those, if you really boil it down, how they speak to one another, right, and the rituals that they practice help bind them, right?
Yeah.
So the first one, to how we speak to one another, and I think I talked to you that that we've defined and really created a coaching methodology that we practice at Mendocino Farms. And in fact, it was interesting if you get to books. So we're actually coming out with a book.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned the first time, and I was going to ask you the process on that.
To be frank, it was definitely serendipitous, but an individual that actually taught me this kind of cutting edge leadership technique when I was 18 years old that really kind of inspired this style of advocate coaching, I ran into at a Mendocino Farms
really
not more than a year ago, as I'd been working on the book, and actually the book's way better now, and he's the co-author, and his name's
Nice.
Scott Greenberg. Unbelievable motivational speaker, speaks at a lot of franchises.
Okay.
Just a thought leader in the space, and we've completely made it. So side note, book's not out yet. It's going to be way better.
I searched for it.
So
believe me.
obviously, it probably would have not been nearly as good.
Hey, well,
now
I'm willing to make another trip back to LA when it goes live.
So it's called the Coaching Cure.
Yeah, and we can. I think we're gonna talk a little bit about coaching. So maybe we can have a teaser for that.
So obviously, one is how we speak to one another. And at Mendocino Farms, whether you're at a Mendocino Farms up in Santa Clara or you're in a Mendocino Farms, in La Jolla, that manager, right? Not just general manager, the assistant managers have all been taught Mendo speak, right? So you could actually, had I not spoken Mendo speak, and I walk into a restaurant and I start yelling at someone, or just acting like a complete horse's ass, even though I'm one of the co-founders of Mendo, someone could actually call out, that was very not Mendo of you, which is powerful.
It is,
right?
Yeah.
That we've actually created a vernacular that's so divine that's the Mendo way of saying it. The next thing is the rituals, right, that we practice, and I think that you can create some beginning rituals, and then it's amazing when you start recruiting, right, your own village, your own community of people that are thinking like-minded. Rituals continue to grow. I remember walking in and
that must be the true testament to a culture, is that it evolves without you.
Yeah.
Right? In the right direction. Sorry.
Oh yeah. No. So one of the rituals that we had created is we have these 8 values, and on a weekly basis at the pre-shift, every single team member needs to share how they're going to live that value that day in their specific job. How I'm going to live the value, right?
Yes,
it's by the way something we learned from the Ritz-Carlton, so it's just completely.
Oh my God, I'm thinking about the Ritz-Carlton right now. I had Hurt Schulte on the show, and he went over the 24 standards of service. So,
okay, there you go.
Yeah, listen to Hurt Schulte's episode if you're interested in what we're talking about.
There you go. See, I'm helping you get more podcasts to go back to. Yeah. So obviously, genius company, and we took that piece from them. Well, I'm listening to this pre-shift. I'd walked into our 7th and Fig restaurant, and all of a sudden I hear this like debate breakout amongst team members, and they're using their regulars cards. So all of our team members have regulars, right? We believe, and we out of setting the table, they collect dots. Based on Danny Myers, so they have all these little nuggets of information about each one of their regulars, and they go into this this deep debate about like calling out regulars' names and why they want to be the fan of the day. And I go to the general manager. I go, "What's the fan of the day?" Like it had not come from us, right? It had not come from my co-founder or myself. He goes, "Oh, it's something the team came up with. We obviously, create regulars and we collect dots or these little nuggets of information about them. So I let them choose whatever fan of the day. And if that person walks in, we all celebrate and buy them lunch, but they don't know if they're going to be a fan of the day.
But knowing that there is a fan of the day must make you wonder, like, I wonder if I can get on, like it makes you want to show up even more, right?
I hope,
probably not
but But what a soulfully in line thing that they came up with. And trust me, within like 3 weeks, I called our COO, Steve Mincer, and I'm like, the best idea came from the team from 7th and Fig. And now it actually is ingratiated in every one of our stores. If you walk in, you'll see a fan of the day board, but it was completely created by the team.
Yeah. And this is kind of reminding me of something. I need to step in real quick because I think it's really important. You mentioned in our first interview the importance of when you go and you check in on other Mendocino farms in different regions, right?
Yeah.
You don't go to like say what they're doing wrong. You're looking for the gold,
Yeah.
right? And I think this is an example of mining for gold.
Yeah.
You never know how your culture is going to scale, but you know it when you see it. And when you do see it, that's when you document it, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you you create a ritual around it, right? So you don't need to know on day one what your rituals are, who you are. Like these are things that happen after 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and like they evolve, you know? So I feel like a lot of people listening to this might be having an anxiety attack or panicking. Like,
we need rituals.
I don't have any of these things. I don't like, you don't know right away, and you're constantly evolving, and culture can change. Like culture can shift, right?
Yeah.
So don't be sweating it right now if you don't have these things. They come with time. Just be mindful of them and document them when they happen.
I would say be mindful, but I think, you know, to just add to that, I think you need to be actively really looking for them. I mean, we had, we pulled a ritual, from a full service restaurant group that was, first guest, best guest, last guest, best guest.
Yes, I have that one written down.
So, so every time, and it came out of, we do such high volume at lunchtime that some of our biggest complaints, either on Yelp or people emailing me or calling me, was, oh my God, I came at 11 o'clock or 11:10 when you open, and it took 30 minutes for you to make a sandwich. Now, they didn't realize we were trying to get thousands of dollars of catering out the door, but they don't care, and nor should they.
Yeah, it's not their problem. They came there for a sandwich.
The mere fact that they walked in at 11 o'clock is that they should be able to get a sandwich as fast, right, as someone that's ordering it at 11:45, right, when the line, is better set. And we had to actually make a commitment financially to even bring people in earlier to make sure that first guest could be best guest. And we actually call it out, and it's loud and it's noisy. We actually have to warn the guest. We super apologize, but this is a ritual we practice. Everyone is going to scream. I'm going to yell first guest, and they're going to yell best guest. Are you okay with it? And 1 out of 10 might say no, and we do it a little softer. 9 out of 10, it can literally wake the dead. And likewise at the end of the day, our stores, have been, successful enough that the team is just beat, from the battle come closing time. But that should not affect the guests walking in at 8:55 when we close at 9, or for that matter, 9:03. Right? Being turned away.
Yes.
And can we practice that? And so it was a ritual that came out of necessity, that we were inspired by other brands, right?
Yes, dude.
So I would say actively seek out those rituals, but at the same time, stay open to your team creating them organically.
Yeah, and we're kind of circling around the why right now, but I don't know if we've quite exposed why rituals are so important.
One more ritual that super jumps out for me, but I'd been asking, John Mackey, who's been a mentor in a Whole Foods Market, is a minority investor in Mendo. But one of my questions was simply like, what do you think? Like what are one of the tools that you've implemented that's helped you scale your culture, right? And it was interesting. He, without hesitating, said appreciations. Ooh. And I go, well, what are those? I mean, I know what an appreciation is, but like, what is the process?
Explain this,
And he said most meetings, if not all of them, when it's in a group, is to set the tone that we are all engaged and appreciative of the people that are in this room. So while we might disagree or we might have some level of conflict or discourse, that we all are united and appreciate one another. So we start the meeting with going around and people from the last meeting mention to people in the group what they specifically appreciate about them.
That's so important to be seen, though. I mean, like,
it's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, being
powerful
seen
ritual.
is like on the third. You look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, it's. My listeners must be banging their head against the wall right now. But hey, Rituals. Deal with it. The first one is, just food, shelter, right? The second one is security. Do I feel secure? The third one is being a part of something and being recognized and being seen and being valued. Yeah. That is so important. It's like the third thing that you can do, or like the first thing you can do that isn't like essential for like survival, right? So sorry, I just had to put I needed to lean into that for you.
Love that. You're going deeper.
I love it, man. I love it. I compound. I love the stuff that it's hard for me not to sometimes. But when I said we're circling around the significance of, and this is probably one of the things you'll learn from our friends over at the Ritz-Carlton, is it's not enough to say that this is who we are. Like, these rituals are what make people act them out every day. And it's not, you have to create ways to, whether during it's a pre-meal or whatever, to like bring back your core values or bring back your standards of operations, or whatever way you can highlight your values or your standards or your culture. Any part of it, you got to find ways to interweave them into your day-to-day so they aren't forgotten, and that they come out in service every day. And that's why these rituals are so important. Do you want to add to that? Or do you disagree? Like, I don't want to put words into your mouth.
So massively agree with you. Okay. I can't even begin to tell you. Because if not, what inevitably will happen is it's a race to mediocrity. It's a race of just being average. I continue, we continue to believe that we are hiring the best team members, in our space. But we very well are getting team members that are at other brands, and have not had nearly the success at other brands that they have with ours.
Yes.
So what are we doing differently with the same people, right? And I would say that how we go about talking to them, how we go about coaching them, the level of feedback we give, but in a caring, supportive way, right? Likewise, allowing them every day to be empowered with knowing what our values are and actually the tools that they can execute. If we say, or we do say, our guests eat happy, we sell our guests happy.
Yes.
Well, what does that mean operationally? Forget like, oh, that's a nice thing, and we have those, it on the wall. What does that mean operationally? What that means is that every single team member on day one is empowered to comp and get in front of the guest something they enjoy. It's not that they misordered or something remotely went wrong. It's the fact that we are not selling you a sandwich or a salad. We're selling you happy. If what you have in front of you is not making you happy, we have not sold you anything yet.
I love it.
Right? So how do you actually like integrate it into the DNA of the team, but actually give them tools to execute, right, on that? And I think it needs to be built into your operations.
I love this. And I think it's important, again, anybody who's listening to this who's like, we're not doing that. You mentioned even in your first interview that you were, and I think it usually goes in an inverse direction, that as you scale, things get worse. But you mentioned that as you've scaled, things have gotten better, because on day one, you weren't doing all these little things at Mendocino's Farm. Even on day 360, you weren't doing these things at Mendocino's Farms. These are things that evolved over time, right? And you've gotten better and better and better. Every time you've doubled in size, you've improved. And you mentioned it earlier, like, you don't make new processes, you don't stack processes on top of processes, you evolve the processes, right?
That's right.
And I think, is that a safe assumption that all these things were happening on day one?
They were absolutely not happening.
So don't freak out right now. We're here to paint the picture of what it can be, right?
Don't freak out. If anything, if you're, a really thoughtful founder, the questions that you want to ask yourself is how do you scale what's going on in your building right now? Right. And what you're going to find is you're going to need to create processes that replicate that same experience without you being in the building. Yeah.
We got to take a break to thank our sponsors. I just realized we're almost 40 minutes into the sucker and I haven't taken my first break yet. We'll be right back. This episode brought to you by MarginEdge. Never deal with a paperwork nightmare again. We're back, and you started talking about coaching during our last interview.
Yes.
And it was at the end of our interview, and I was literally itching to pull back layers, but I wanted to respect your time, but I got you back. So let's pick it up. Coaching, like why is coaching so important? Start diving into that just a little bit, but not too much. I mean, just go. I'll let you do whatever you want to do.
Okay. Well, no, I think that if you're to give one kind of magic ingredient,
I'll just say this. Keep in mind, a lot of our listeners are already listening to that first episode, so they kind of have the aerial view of coaching from their perspective.
If I was going to say one magic ingredient of what's helped make Mendocino Farms, unstoppable, has been our ability to teach our coaching style to our management, and that coaching style, is this idea of coaching by the numbers.
Yes.
Okay. So where we differentiate is oftentimes, people will say, I've got a certain coaching style, right? And that's really about them. When in fact, we've kind of pulled it away and made it more like you're a doctor. Okay. And you need to actually first diagnose your team member and actually deliver them the coaching that they need, not the coaching, that you're comfortable with.
Okay.
And what I say is, imagine if you were a doctor and you have a coaching style, right? In essence, you have a pill. So for no matter what, every single patient you see, you like give them this pill.
Okay.
Right? You'd be sued for malpractice, right? Versus actually doing a diagnosis. And the two things that we look and we teach our team to diagnose is first the team member's mindset, and next their skill set. Right. So if I'm a high mindset, low skill set, right? I'm a 1. I'm really excited to learn this new task. I just don't know how to do it. So all I really need you to do from a coaching style is don't be discouraging, but you don't have to be super encouraging. Just be really specific.
Yeah.
Give me all the details, right? We call it like kind of a John Wooden style. Really walk me through the basics, right? And that's all I need. I'll thrive. I'm already excited.
Because you have the ambition, the excitement. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's say that you don't get coached with the basics. So you had a high mindset, but now all of a sudden you have a low mindset and a low skill set because, in fact, you've now done the job a little while, but you were never coached really well, and you're having mixed results. In fact, I'm coming by and I'm going like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, I kind of showed you how to do this. What are you doing wrong? Right? So now I have low skill set, low mindset. Now what does that person need? Well, first of all, they still need, right, part of what you're supposed to give them when they had the high mindset and the high skill set. They need the basics.
Yeah.
They need the basics. Now they need a giant dose of encouragement attached to it, right? The next one is high skill set, high mindset. And this is where I think a lot of organizations miss out. They have their best performers. We do this all the time in the restaurant industry. If we have a high performer, we just literally like let them do their thing. Well, in fact, if you're a high performer doing the same job over and over again and not constantly being challenged and not spending the time coaching on them, right?
Yeah.
You'll get bored very well, or not feeling like you're appreciated. Oh, that person's always great. So now I don't feel like I'm hungry for appreciation. I'm great at so many tasks because like I crave to be great.
Yeah.
And you're not appreciating me, or I'm getting bored with the job. And so often we have those people either fall off or worse, they slip down and they become high skill set, low mindset. And that's the fourth piece, right?
So
we call that in the red, or there are 3, right? But they're in the red. So now how do I coach them? Do I give them the basics like I did, for the first 2? No, that would offend them.
Yeah.
They're already high skill set.
Yeah.
Now it's the why. I got to give them purpose. I got to
self-actualize.
I got to share with them, how of an impact they are to the group and what role they can play. And we really call this very Phil Jackson.
They need to be
coaching.
seen, right? Recognized.
That's
appreciated.
Right. And given new challenges, and that can help them get back in the blue. So we can either keep people as a 4 or in the blue, or how do we get them after they've slid back, right? And that's a completely different.
What's the scale? 1 to 5?
1 to 4.
1 to 4. Gotcha.
So a 1 is high mindset, low skill set. A 2 is low skill set, low mindset. A 3 is high skill set, low mindset, and a 4 is high skill set, high mindset.
Okay. One thing that's like jabbing at me in the side right now is when you have somebody who has low encouragement. Yeah. How do you encourage them? What's a good approach to encourage somebody who has the skill set, who might be a 2 with
Okay, wait. If there are 2 that they're low mindset, low skill set. So are they a 3?
3 would be high skill set, low mindset.
That's right.
Okay, so there's
You already got it, Eric.
I'm
You
learning,
can
man.
teach
There's
this.
hope.
Okay.
If I can figure this stuff out, you guys can figure this
Genius.
stuff out. So there are 3. And
You're a 3.
How do you bring that 3 to a 4? Give me an example of how you encourage them.
Yeah,
Go deeper there.
No, there's lots of ways that you can take a high performing team member and get them re-engaged, right? One is actually let them coach A1. Let them coach someone new to a task that they're already an expert. One, I'm validating for them that I see them as an expert, right? So that gives them a little bit of that recognition, right? Another way is actually, how can I make the job more interesting? Oftentimes our team members doing the same repetitive thing.
Yeah.
They want new challenges, right?
Yeah, they want to be
So how do I give them a new task that they have to learn that they might actually have a very low skill set to, but their mindset will switch because they get to have this new challenge, right? And we always have to really realize it's per task, right? So oftentimes we'll have a high performing team member, right, that was in the blue or a 4 at a certain task, and then we promote them to manager. And then it just assumed that they already like what, now know everything? No. At every one of those tasks, they're probably a 1, right? They're probably a beginner in the green.
It's a whole new set of skills.
A whole new task.
Yeah.
So they might have actually a real excitement.
So it starts over.
So
do you have tiers?
That's right.
Okay.
So it starts over. And
how many tiers are there that you guys do?
So it's 4. Again,
tiers.
it's 4 for every task.
Okay.
You're a 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Okay.
And that's the coaching by the numbers.
Got you.
It'll be in the book. I don't know if we did it justice today. Scott Greenberg, my co-authors.
We can do a deep dive on this whole thing. I'll love to get you. I mean, you have an open invitation.
Okay. All right.
Anytime you want to come back, my platform is your platform.
Maybe we'll invite Scott, and it would be a fun time because coaching career, I think, is actually a great tool that going back to that idea of innovation, I think it's an open source. I mean, we've been using these practices even before Mendocino Farms. We were using it in prior restaurant groups that we had owned. So this is old knowledge, and it's been time tested.
Yeah.
So it's great to be able to share that
But it's
with
important to bring it to the
like-minded
surface, man. It's
restaurants.
Really, and I'm happy we're going over it.
Yeah.
Here. So I would like to pick up where we left off. I mean, the last time you were on the show, I think it was 2017 or the year isn't that important. It was a couple of years ago. A lot has happened since then. You go from 17, I think you said, to 30? 33. So you almost doubled in size, or have at least almost doubled in size. What new lessons have you learned? What new challenges were you faced with over these past few years that we can maybe learn from your experiences?
Yeah, again, I briefly mentioned it, but I think, when I look back, one of the greatest kind of aha moments, for me, and it's probably, one of the bigger ones, was within the same 6-month time period, we recruited Steve Mincer. He was a VP at BJ's Pizza, and at the same time recruited, a few months later, a gentleman by the name of Jim Rich, who was a former VP of training for CPK.
Okay.
And these two individuals, beyond completely aligning with Mendo values, whether they knew what Mendo was or not, they did. But what they brought to the company, to both Ellen and myself, was here are two people that actually had seen, the BJ's movie play out. For that matter, Steve, was even an original cheesecake guy. So he'd seen a little bit of the cheesecake movie play.
Okay.
Had definitely seen the BJ's movie play out.
Okay.
And here you have Jim Rich that was 30 plus years with CPK. So had definitely watched and been an active player in the CPK movie.
Okay.
So you have these two people that kind of know what's around the next corner. And I really believe as founders, and all the different jobs, that we have, but that there's real creativity and magic that founders can bring. I'm if anything, one of my biggest roles now in this stage of my life is investing and being on boards, of founder-based companies to help, maintain that magic while scaling. And I think that's something that is needed more of.
Yes, yeah.
But
I put that in the back burner. That was back of the question I alluded earlier.
Okay. So I've got great stuff to talk, and
Yeah.
we can go into it. I have some interesting comments around that. But the mere fact that you can actually complement yourself with these individuals that understand the right processes to bring to actually execute on the dream, right, on the mission as you scale, and actually really know how to not just put in those processes, but then build the teams around those processes. And that's why I said I think that the number 2 thing on being unstoppable is that you build a team that's unstoppable.
And I was going to point out that you mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
And where were you and Ellen with your skill set and your abilities before bringing them on? How were you trying to compensate yourself?
Well,
where were you weak, and how did they make you more rounded?
First of all, I think we're every one of the founders that might be listening to this, like, you wear like 15 hats.
Yeah.
You just keep switching them on and off. I mean, you're HR to ops to training to
accounting or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, your R&D. Yeah. You're every hat, right? I think what really, was a turning point for us as a company was that I think that Ellen and I were really on the precipice of doing very innovative training, right? But here we had a thought leader in training in Jim Rich coming on board and going like, I love those ideas.
Yes.
Can I edit them? Can I add from the context of where I came from, but where it fits? He didn't just bring the CPK playbook.
Yeah.
Right. It helped inform like what worked and what didn't work, but he completely took what the seeds of that magic and really said, okay, I actually I know how we're gonna make this, and still to this day I look at it and go like, oh my god, our training is so much better.
So what did he tweak? How did he make it even better? Because I mean, you guys where you were in 3 years ago was still a pretty badass place, and now you made that even better.
And to his credit, he's been with us for 5 years.
Okay,
so we were already on the path of doing things really, really well.
Got you.
No, he's continued to leverage both technology. Brought more people, that are like-minded, and then trained them.
Was it his idea to bring in Wisetail?
It was.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Are you guys still using Wisetail?
How do you know this?
Because I had interviewed you 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, he is the architect of all those pieces.
Okay.
And then, it goes with, I really do want to give props. Steve Mincer was so, first of all, he's one of the most thoughtful, caring, people in the restaurant space. But he also was able to take, the uniqueness of Mendo and not just overlay what he had learned at BJ's, and really kind of create a new platform to build Mendo on that was definitely inspired by what he'd learned in his prior experience, but was definitely unique to Mendo. And we owe him a massive credit in what he was able to, or what he continues to be able to build, at Mendo. So that was the aha moment. Was we think that we know always the best way to bring thought leaders in, not to argue with, but to collaborate with, right, and to actually create something new and better. Change Mendo. It's allowed us to be at 33 units and have the success that we've had.
So I'm curious. I want to kind of bring it back to hit me with those 3 names again one more time. I was trying to pay attention. I didn't have time to take notes.
That's okay. I like this. This is in real. This has real authenticity.
Yeah, this is how I roll, man. Chaos, like I said.
We might as well have gotten some beers. So we have Jim Rich.
Yeah,
he's our he runs our training for Mendo, and then we have Steve Mincer, and that's our he's head of all of our operations.
Okay. Yeah. Was there 3 names? I thought you said you got 3 people on. Maybe I
no, it was just
okay.
2.
This is why I'm asking.
I
want to make sure I give credit where credit is due.
Oh, that's there's so many more people. I can. I mean, the list is very, very long.
So back to Jim, and he was in charge of training.
Yeah.
He kind of took what you guys had. He tweaked it. Back to Wisetail, because Wisetail, past sponsor of the show. I love Wisetail.
Yeah.
I'm really curious.
Should be a future sponsor if we talk about them enough right now.
Well, that's not the point, but I think I believe in it. And I try to find sponsors I believe in.
We do
because
too.
I don't want to promote products and services I don't think will make an impact. So what did Wisetail do for your company? How did this make you guys better?
Yeah. Where I think that Wisetail becomes very useful and significant is it's obviously it's white label. So you as a brand get so much freedom to make it, part of your DNA and to reflect, your culture and your values. But it gave a central location for our team to be, if whenever in doubt, it's this central place to get recharged about all things that are Mendo.
Yeah.
From appreciating other team members to tidbits on selling happy to coaching lessons, but delivered in the way that are using the coaching by the colors. So it became this. It is this central hangout.
Yep.
Right. That allows our team, when in doubt, right, to come and get recharged, to understand, what the plan is and where we're going.
Yep.
So it just becomes this very powerful tool that again has allowed us to scale culture. They get to see fellow team members in different states now.
Yeah.
We're in Texas.
Well, that's the key
and be able to
thing.
understand and feel like this greater belonging, because it almost becomes your Facebook of your friends, right? That's crafted for your brand. So I'm a big fan of not just a big fan of Wisetail as a platform, a big fan of what the Mendo team has done to actually make it live. We actually have this incredible team member, Rebecca, who oversees many of the Wisetail and oversees a lot of our training.
Yeah, the way I think of Wisetail is a platform through which to transfer culture, because when you start scaling, you start getting further apart.
Yes.
But you need something to bring you closer. It's the gluten in bread is like what Wisetail is called, right? It keeps things close. It keeps things tight. And like video and training, and you can also customize your own brand into it, like coloring and stuff like this. So like your brand is being echoed everywhere. It can be very on point. It's a very powerful tool if used right.
Yeah.
And I don't need to get too deep into that because I don't know if all my listeners are there yet.
Yeah.
This is like I think
But if you take a tool and you're scaling past 10 stores, highly recommend the investment.
Okay, that's a good marker. 10 stores, good to know. Okay, Steve, we got to talk about Steve. Any key because he was operations.
Yeah.
How did he come in and how did he?
And still is. Yeah. He's. How did he come involved? Just at some point as a founder, and this is where, you probably don't want to necessarily create a board too early, but you want to seek out mentorship. Through some of my mentors, in the early innings, they highly recommended, that I brought in a senior operations person to really codify, some of the good things that we were doing and hopefully bring some new things. So through that mentorship and through that advice, which by the way is kind of hard to listen to sometimes, because those individuals that are as good as Steve are expensive, and it's always hard as founders because you got where you are because you're frugal, to go ahead and spend money not for the business that you have, but the business that you want to have.
But I think it's also important, that mentality of sharing. Like if you have success, share it. You know what I mean? Like it's not about how big you get; it's about the impact you make. And when you have the means to make an impact on other people, go deeper, not out. And that will lead to further outward growth. But I think we look outward and we don't look inward. So I don't know.
No, it's interesting. I'll tell you. Within days of Steve joining the team, after we spent a very long time convincing him that this was a good place for him to spend his time, the impact was palpable. I mean, what he was able to do, and the systems that I would say that he layered in. Right, he couldn't treat us like a 200 unit BJ's. I think at the time Steve came on board, we were 7 units. Right. You know what I mean? But as a real architect, he knew the foundation to put in, and then just kind of started kind of building the rooms.
So reflecting at what he did, like what's the one or two things that you observing this that he had the biggest impact on your business? Yeah,
I mean, it's starting to get nerdy and geeky, but for the people that are scaling, I think one of the most critical pieces that a senior operations person, that's at a Steve level status, and there aren't a lot of them around, but they really understand the significance of first GMs and having good routines and having solid metrics to understand, so on a daily basis, they understand if they're being successful or not.
Track it. You got to track
right?
it. Yeah.
So one is he was hugely influential on establishing what the GM routine was. hugely influential on not just creating, because we had some good metrics, but metrics that they could see on a weekly and then eventually daily basis. The second piece to that, but it's attached, is then actually recruiting directors of operations and giving them great routines and giving them great metrics. And that's when, like, we talked about this ingredient.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, how do you scale? Like, do DOs just like kind of show up and they're just like a little more important than a GM, you know?
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, I go back to the directors of ops that we've had in our company, and some of which now have gone on to VP level positions. But massive impact players can literally go into a region, where they have 3 or 4 Mendos, and all of a sudden, increase them by double digit, right? Because they have that much ability. But a lot of that is from a really good routine that's consistent through, the system. So when I start thinking about can Mendo be better at 50 than it is at 33? And knowing the kind of pieces that Steve's put in with regards to scaling operations, I say yes.
Yeah. I think it's important to mention, you took 4 years from our previous conversation. I remember this. You took 4 years. I can't remember from where to where.
From 1 to 2.
From 1 to 2.
Yeah.
To really to get the systems down. This is a great lesson, because before you scale, you got to build the framework through which you're going to scale into.
Yeah.
You can't just it's like building an addition onto your house. You can't just walk into space. You got to build the frames to walk on, so you can then put, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need something there so you can expand into it. And it sounds like that is kind of, I think, continuing at this point. It's
interesting you bring this up. I think in retrospect, I think we actually kind of knew a lot of it at the time. But we had very much, I don't know, maybe you call it an opposite black swan theory. It was the first Mendo had so much success. I mean, it's 70 plus people in line every lunch, right? But at some point, and I appreciate this about my business partner. I think it's been one of my strengths, is that we're very realistic that a lot of that success very well might have been through geography. We just didn't have a lot of great competitors. We weren't that great. And I think the fact that we were willing to pump the brakes and ask ourselves, what are we doing really well? And what do we need to do better? Do we really understand our brand? Do we really understand our niche? Likewise, do we have systems to scale? Can we actually replicate this if we weren't in the building? We were asking ourselves those questions, and it, I don't think we needed to wait 4 years. I think it just became weird trying to find a second location, but it for sure made us delay 2 years.
Yeah.
And I hear from a lot of my, the people, I'm not going to call them young mentors, but young in the business, that will come to me and they constantly talk about that, it's a land grab. And I'm like, it's never in the restaurant space.
A land grab? What did you say?
A land grab. That land grab. I've got something kind of good. I've got to scale it. I've got to make the real estate. I've got all these competitors in the market that are going to beat me to the corner that I want. And you have to kind of pause and go, gosh, go ahead and let your competitor burn through their money.
Yeah, and then
go
we'll
to
their
that
exit
corner
strategy.
Yeah, and then go ahead and buy that spot or take it over. Like slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
If you look at these
Big picture,
iconic brands that know who they are and are playing the long game.
Yep.
So again, we had some really good mentorship. Specifically at that time, Tom Sims, the founder of Mimi's Cafe, and he's gone on. Two of his sons are incredible restaurateurs. Chris Sims, Lazy Dog Cafe.
Yes.
Mike Sims has
I had
got
Chris Sims on the show.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Okay, great friend of mine. Mike Sims, his younger brother.
I forgot he's out here, isn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh man, I should hit him up. Okay,
I'll give you his number. I should give you his number on the podcast, then
phone,
everyone
honestly.
can have it. No,
Yeah.
I'm joking. Just joking, Chris. But then also Mike Sims, his younger brother has been unbelievably successful with Simsies and their fine dining. But Tom is just this legendary restaurant person. But it's because he's truly a professor. I go back to.
There we go again.
Tom probably gave me one of the greatest lessons. And it was the lesson that I try to give other mentorees, and some some don't get it, but it was the hearing something I didn't want to hear. Because the first thing he said to me was, yeah, on your next store, you got to go out to the suburbs. Mind you, we had just done a second urban store, just signed the lease. We hadn't even built it yet. And we're going to do more urban stores. They were doing great. They're open Monday through Friday, easy to run.
Here comes
no
the big
weekends.
why. Why did he want you to go to the suburbs? There had to have been a reason.
He said, and I thought it was great, and I actually heard in later podcasts with the Airbnb founders that they got similar advice. And by the way, this is, this dates. Airbnb hadn't even been invented when Tom Sims gave us this advice.
Yeah.
But he goes, as a founder, this is the one time that you are so in your business. I mean, he literally, when he'd come visit me, I was still making sandwiches. He goes, you are so in your business right now that you have the opportunity to not do iterations, but revolution, right? You have the opportunity to make big, bold adjustments. And this is the one time that you can do it. And if you can't be successful with sandwiches in suburbia, then you really don't have something.
So you're
that's
testing
special,
the market, basically,
right? Like you don't have something that's that special.
So you're basically saying at this point in your life, or the evolution of your business's life, you are small and nimble enough. You're a jet ski. You can make pivots and adaptations. And once you get bigger, it's gonna be harder to adjust.
Well, the Airbnb advice, which was from one of their early investors in Airbnb, was, and this is like second year. He goes, "Hey, you got something pretty good. Now you actually have to go out to New York and talk to every one of your, the people that are having an Airbnb and get all that feedback while you're still on the ground. You're still right beside the programmers. You're still so deep in the business that you can make revolutionary changes,
pivots,
huge pivots to the brand."
Yeah, there's a really great book, Eric Ries's The Lean Startup, that I think kind of dissects this mindset right here.
Oh.
The importance of being small and nimble and getting that feedback. Because as you get bigger, it's the difference between the analogy is being a jet ski versus being a cruise ship.
That's right.
You can't adjust as a cruise
That's
ship.
right.
There's big things take a long time to
Yeah.
that's why linebacker or linemen aren't running backs. So they can't juke. They go straight. Fast.
No, so not only am I continue to have massive gratitude for Tom Sims, but the things that came out of it, we changed our ordering system from going to suburbia. We adjusted the menu to be far more to have far more salads and to be great at salads, which was a huge pivot. There were so many huge, we changed the size of the dining room. We changed the size of to-go and the to-go area based on being in the business and that close to it in a place that was, I would say, arguably the first year of opening in Marina Del Rey in suburbia was an absolute S show. It was guests screaming that whoever created this concept has to be the stupidest person that exists, and for you to have to hear that firsthand was pretty tough, but great. So we were able to really by our fourth and fifth store, we were able to implement all these changes and have some real deep success.
So when you were making these pivots, these early pivots, how did you know it was the right move? Was it just numbers, or was it gut, or combination?
No, I think that I go back to, are you making it by gut? I think your gut is so often informed by data. And again, it's not just the guest telling me what it should do. It's also looking at movements and trends, right? It's establishing in the middle of the lunch rush that there's not enough seats inside the building, or that the mom, if you're one of your core customers, or your core customer is a Lululemon mom, and she doesn't have enough room to push her double stroller right through the dining room, then your dining room doesn't have wide enough passing lanes. Yeah. It's those things continue
empathy.
to
putting yourself in their position,
inform you. Yeah. No. So again, to your point, I think that there is some gut, but it's completely informed by what you're observing from your guest, particularly your what you consider your core kind of guest, as well as trends and movements that you're seeing in the industry. And again, I go back to the studying of your competitors and understanding what's been successful for them. I laugh because Mendocino Farms really is an updated version of Panera Bread. And I can go into like how funny, but I can't believe that I wasn't like arrested or having a restraining order to not walk into the Panera Bread across the street.
But they didn't invent sandwiches, soups, and salads either. So
No. But the size of their dining room and the success they had in suburbia, I would literally walk into a Panera Bread and I would actually measure the distance between tables. Just to make sure like how far our tables were, right? Okay. Or looking at their communal tables and the ones that people sat at based on the width and distance.
I think it's a simple thing we can do in our mind, just a simple trick we can play on ourselves. Don't look at these people as competitors. Look at them as comrades. You know what I mean? I think by doing that, it kind of changes the relationship. Like you've gone through, I can learn a lot from you. Like
comrades feels very communist. I like. No, I'm joking. I like the neighbors thing.
Yeah, neighbors. I'll go back to neighbors. Who's your neighbor? So I have one more big question that I'm sitting on, but I feel like I feel selfish. I feel like this entire time it's been all me. You have taken notes. I'm honored.
Eric, that you put it is your podcast. You get to.
But you're spitting gold, man. And I want to give you a chance. What's near and dear to your heart? Get it out. I want to give you time. Like, what's the most important thing that you wanted to communicate today? Before I want to make sure that gets the conversation before I ask my last question. Before I go to the speed round.
I don't know if it's like necessarily the most important thing because I think you've covered a lot of good things. You're very accomplished at what you do. Hopefully there's been some nuggets for people that are up and coming in the business. If they are, then we've done a good work. But the one thing I would say that, that's helped, helped me get to, where we are today, has been through mentorship. This very much is an apprentice, business and to be able to seek out. And I kind of gave the advice earlier. There's just so many mentors. And I was saying the best thing I ever learned from Tom wasn't necessarily just the advice of going to suburbia. It was the fact that I didn't want to hear it. Like I literally caught myself wanting to push back and debate it with this person that's had ridiculous success and is just so much smarter than me. And
pain hurts.
Thank God I just shut up. Right. I just shut up and I let it mull over me. And it really did inform, and we obviously, it helped us. But so often, I'll have, people seek mentorship, from me. And I would say the majority completely listen, but there's actually a very big minority that really all they want is for someone to validate that they are already on the perfect plan and almost just nod.
Yeah. And
they're missing so much opportunity for growth. Right, they're really missing.
I just said pain hurts. I meant to say growth hurts.
Okay,
but so what are you trying to communicate? Get outside of your trajectory. Be open minded to what those who have gone through this. Don't necessarily do everything everybody says, but at least consider what are you trying to like? What's the key lesson?
I just you had mentioned, hey, I might ask you, who are some of your mentors, and it was ridiculous. I don't have to even think. They kind of spill over me, with each one of the lessons. I think about, I listened to Tom, but like Nick Marsh, which I think you've interviewed, the CEO of Chopped Salads.
Yep.
I mean, literally one of the smartest CEOs in the business. But in fact, if you look at why, I mean, he's been able to continue to still harness the two founders of Chopped, Tony and Colin. And continue to actually allow them to sprinkle some of that magic while building this unbelievable infrastructure around them. And now has just created what he calls Founders Table and saying, let me replicate, what I just did with Chopped.
Yeah.
And he's just plugged in Dos Toros.
Okay.
What you don't know is Mendo so plugged into Chopped in the early years, and they were basically our big brother restaurant in so many ways because Nick was such an influential. He's our first board member, but the idea to replicate that, like founders, can come to a organization that wants to continue to harness what makes that concept great, but give them the infrastructure and the learnings, to be able to scale. And I think it's a big idea, but I look at Nick and going like, God, had we not had Nick,
he was a great guest. I'll be sure to link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
And I always say it, and this is probably one of the biggest lessons I had, like the biggest, and it seems so simple that like, it's kind of silly when I say it out loud sometimes. Behind every great restaurant's a great person.
Yeah.
And they're the reason why their restaurant is great is because that person is great, and their restaurant is an extension of who they are.
And they built a a great team.
And they built a great team, but they
because the team craves to be, part of what that person's
But great
helping.
people are attracted to other great people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's usually it's like moths being drawn to a light. You know what I'm saying? So unless you will never attract onto yourself the people you need unless you become a great person. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if that's something you can learn or not.
I think it is learned. Like if I was ever to give like some book recommendations, not to jump around, but
jump all over the place.
Someone that has been a mentor to me, one of the brightest people around, like how to build a team, recruit the right people, Alice Elliott. But she had her conference, her Breaking Bread conference, and God, I remember it so well because it was all the way in New York, and it was back in the early days. This is might even be 10 years ago. And we could barely afford to get out to New York. So I remember it because it was a big like commitment.
I feel that.
That
I wouldn't
Alice,
be here if not for my friends in the aviation industry giving me buddy passes. So
okay,
I get it.
there you go. So Alice Elliott invited us to this like Breaking Bread conference. It was, which she still does. It's amazing. But she had this speaker, Jeff Colvin. He wrote this book called Talent is Overrated. It's a must read. It really brings up this process of deliberate practice, right? And it's practice with a plan. It's practice with enormous amount of feedback, and it's practice that's hard, right? Is this notion of deliberate practice?
Lean into it, right?
And when he's really saying with this idea of deliberate practice is that greatness, like what defines the greatest athletes or the greatest performers, isn't that they were touched by God, right? Is that they've actually, it's learned. And if it's learned, then we can all learn it.
And that's the mission of this
Right?
podcast.
There you go.
Yes.
No, that's
Yes.
why I said you were doing the Lord's work. So,
Well, thank you.
And then I did want to mention there's like a few other, like when I think through my mentors, and hopefully this isn't just like giving them props, but it's also helping the listener understand like what I've pulled away. We got an opportunity to learn from Cheesecake Factory, and one of the people that like jumped out was probably another professor in the industry is this gentleman Donald Moore. Truly, he's chief culinary officer, and watching his innovation process and watching their team spend as much time on innovating existing items that were already like delicious and craveable and making them more craveable, and actually giving that as much time as creating new items, gave us a new regiment at Mendo. It actually changed Mendo, 3 or 4 years ago.
Was this the 60-40 rule? Is that what you're with?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Was that in the last one?
I think so. But the
good.
mentality that
So you asked a lot.
60% of our energy in the as far as like the back of house with
yes,
is going into doing what we do even better, and
that's
40%
right.
is R&D.
Yeah. That
came from
totally
Apple,
came
right?
from it really came from Donald Moore.
Okay.
It came from Cheesecake.
Yeah. But that's actually, I'm happy that you brought this up, because that was one of my questions that I skipped because I didn't want to abuse our time, and I wanted to leave a lot of time for you. So what's this whole mentality around consistency then? So there's like one of the people say consistency is so important. It has to be the same. It has to be predictable. It has to be the same. How do you balance consistency with constant evolution?
Okay. Well, I think that constant evolution should never happen at the individual stores.
All right.
That's a super bad thing that Steve
consistency
Mincer, our COO, would say that was really bad, right?
Yeah.
So constant innovation can absolutely happen, with the R&D team. And when I say innovation, doesn't necessarily have to be for a new item, but again, we should spend as much time making our craveable items even more craveable.
Yeah.
We already know they sell well.
Yeah.
Right now, if we can make them even more craveable, so that's one. But back to consistency, our team, and we have an incredible executive chef in Jeremy Bringardner, and he's complemented by some great chefs, Harold Mendoza. They can make the most delicious sandwich that you have ever had in your entire life. They can.
Yeah.
They're really good at what they do.
But can everybody do that?
But the fact is, can they make it in such a way that our supply chain, can put it in our stores, the training, and to be able to have one of our very engaged, $15 plus an hour probably line cook, right? Can they replicate it and not making one for the co-founder, right? But make like 50 of them during the middle of the lunch rush, right? Are they going to be able to do it? And can they do it if Jeremy and a Harold, made the sandwich at let's say a 9.5? Can they consistently make it somewhere between a 7.5 and an 8.5? And if they can, that's the genius. The genius isn't the 9.5 making one for the co-founder in a structured place with no rush and not having to make 50 other things. The genius is in the consistency,
providing the process around it.
And the consistency of being able to do it in a high volume in multiple locations. And that's why when you hear like, I give a lot of props to our R&D team, but you'd hear that I give far more to our ops team. Because I think that's actually what makes it really special is making it at 8.5 at that volume.
Yeah.
Our team doing that consistently, that's powerful.
I love this, man. So the big question I've been sitting on, you mentioned this in our first interview, and when I listened to it again to prepare for this episode, something that resonated with me, and I'm kind of on the same base with you, but I'm open-minded. I want to say that I'm in the state. One of my core values is open-mindedness. I have biases, and it's around the what you said is that you spent 2 years studying the franchise world. For a lot of reasons, you decided that wasn't for you. And I kind of lean in that direction. I've had a few franchise operators on the show, and I think that it's important to get their perspective on why they think that model is good, because maybe I'm always being turned on to new thoughts, new perceptions, and new angles. So what were the lessons you learned that made you think that wasn't the right model?
First of all, I actually think some franchises are phenomenal.
And I've learned that myself.
Unbelievably, are great and have been able to,
I'm a moderate in most
culture.
Things
So, no, but I want to be clear. What I think the thing that I pulled away from, really doing a deep dive on successful franchisors is that there has to be a commitment that you're actually operating a different business. So if right now, we're running a restaurant business, we have to, if Mendocino Farms was to become a franchise, which it could, right, that we would have to build a completely different group, right, that actually is in the franchise business. So it's one thing to have a director of operations, but now we need an entire training department. We need now an entire recruiting and training department for the proper franchisees. And how do we get them? Who are they, right? And who would be best for a Mendocino Farms, which is a very, as much as we're only in 3,000 square feet, it's pretty complicated. We're also, because we're doing so much from scratch, we're a commissary-based spoken wheel system. So you have to you can't have an individual doctor that just wants to own a couple. You actually need like a real restaurant group that would be willing to, do an area development and build a commissary and maintain a commissary. So you would have to have, it's a new model, right? To be able to, to have it. So I think that the things that are the most successful in franchising are, particularly in the restaurant space, are restaurants that are simpler, don't have as many moving parts, right? Easier to train, so then people can have the same, consistent experience, elsewhere. Our food is pretty complicated, right? The scratch cooking at the commissary.
So it's hard to scale.
We have a pretty robust menu. We have so many different revenue channels. I mean, we're almost 12% third party delivery. We're 21% catering.
So I think we
have these like big hard things to like run. Like that's a tough thing to go train an individual or even a small franchisee, like for a few units. Could we train a huge restaurant group? Totally.
So here's the thing that this is why when I hear about like all the reasons you're listing right now, all those are all like, when I think of franchise, what makes them successful is simplicity. But sometimes when we try to simplify things too much, it's not always the hardest thing. You know what I'm saying? But what we were talking about earlier, sometimes the hard thing is the best way.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they try to make it so easy that they take a lot of the specialness out of it.
Yeah.
And I think the world needs more special things. That's one of my issues. The other issue is scalability with the food system. We have a broken food system. We've identified this.
Yeah.
And that model supports a broken food system.
Yeah.
And you see some of your friends are trying to think of a way that they can maintain the integrity of our food system while scaling. They're having trouble, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do.
No, we're all
Maybe
having
we
trouble.
shouldn't try to fix that problem. Maybe that problem is a governor that we should respect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just throwing this out here. These are some of my issues, right? And but I'm open-minded, but this is what I've seen from my 700 interviews. And the other issue
That's a pretty good context, by the way, Eric.
The other issue I have is with regionality.
Okay.
We have no regionality anymore. Like you can, like no region has the same charm it used to. And I feel like that's partially due to a lot of scaling. I think when you scale a big business, you take a lot of identity out of the community. People want to be identified with their community. They want to create, and it makes being a creator much more difficult. I feel like in this market, when there's so much market being taken up by massive corporations and franchises. And I'm open-minded to learn something, but this is how I feel. And I feel comfortable enough around you. I feel like you have great perspective. You can teach me something.
You should. I mean, if I was going to say the two things that I think have been the greatest challenge for Mendo and still are, first is how to scale our culture, right, which we've covered at length, ad nauseum.
I hope I'm not attacking you right now.
No, God, no. This is the stuff that cool. that resonates with me. The second thing is how to scale our supply chain. And I think one of the things that we really struggled with, years ago was there just has not been a lot of great examples in the restaurant space of a restaurant group scaling and being able to maintain a certain level of authenticity and transparency in their supply chain. And it really led me to trying to seek out, who could inform us on how to scale what we were trying to ambitiously accomplish from a supply chain. And that's actually what led me to seeking out mentorship from John Mackey at Whole Foods. If you think about it, they'd already at that point, this is almost 5-6 years ago, they'd already scaled nationally. I'm doing air quotes, which isn't good for a podcast.
We got video.
Oh yeah, we got video.
Scroll down just a little bit on your iTunes player, and you can subscribe to the YouTube channel and watch this interview. Get a little plugs out of the way.
Yeah, you might not. I have a face for radio. So anyway, so on that note, one of the things that's been great, and I encourage actually like-minded restaurants is Whole Foods has actually cracked the code on a lot of things. And if I was gonna say a few of them, one of which is the idea that that if you want to support the smaller local farmer and artisan, then you probably need to do it regional, from a regional perspective, right? Because they are smaller and they don't have the national, capability, but that's kind of a good thing, right?
Governor.
So the idea that when you can support local artisans, when you can use a more local field grain or any of these pieces, that you can plug them in. Right, but that you kind of create these. We created with a few friends actually over dinner with Kimball Musk and Chris Sims,
Kimball Musk,
Mike
Chipotle,
Sims, right? And Tony Owen and I.
Yeah,
Kimball's on the board there,
okay.
I don't know, or maybe still is, but he has the kitchen.
Yes,
and just a really thoughtful, deep thinking guy. He's a good person, maybe to.
He's on my radar.
Okay,
there's a reason why I recognize the name.
Yeah, he's super, super thoughtful human being. But anyway, one of the things that we had come up with is that and we practice it at Mendocino Farms, is we have a 3-tier system. So if you're a tier 1, and this speaks to like the broken food system. If you're a tier 1 vendor of Mendo, we do not negotiate with you on price. You tell us how much you have to sell an item from. We don't blindly just buy it at that item, but as long as you show us, why and give us all the back. What we then ask you if the item is too expensive is if we find innovative ways to get that item cheaper to us, can we share that savings together? Right? But instead of us like maybe going to a big broadliner and going, you just need to get your prices down on your goat cheese.
Broadliner
right?
by US, or are you talking about performance food? Or
we'll go ahead and not name those those really big guys, but you can.
All right.
But anyway, if you go to a giant broadliner, their first inclination, right, is to go to the farmer and the artisan. Which, by the way, if we're living off of nickels in the restaurant business, they're living off pennies, right? And we start beating them up rather than saying you're tier one. We're here to take care of you. We actually exist to support local farmers and artisans that deserve it.
This is conscious capitalism,
which
right
means
here.
yes,
Yeah.
which means that we have a relationship that deserves it. Means we have a relationship. We don't have a name that some other vendor gave us that we can put on a wall. We actually have a working relationship with our tier one vendors, right? Now, tier two means that you meet our qualifications, but there are other people that are competitive, in your space, and that there is some negotiation that's allowed.
They have the same right that you have to this.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then tier three, which we would consider commodity. Now, commodity to us is Whole Foods Market or better.
Okay.
Since Whole Foods has invested, we do not serve anything that can't be sold at a Whole Foods.
Gotcha.
So our idea of commodity is probably far different than what most people's idea. But tier three to us is we can fully negotiate, we can fully interchange, and in fact, we our tier three vendor relationships are what affords us to be able to support tier one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a different perspective. Now, if you go, to a Whole Foods and you see there's different vendors that they're really shining a light on, and then there's plenty of more the blocking and tackling items, right? There's so many other things that to localize things. The mere fact that you get to meet your team. Here's Whole Foods, this giant company that's in Canada and England and all over North America and owned by Amazon, and yet still you walk into your Whole Foods Market, right? Your local Whole Foods Market, and they're introducing you to the staff, right, and sharing with them their stories, right? And I think that that's been a huge piece that we've taken as well as we scale, is to really make sure that people know that this team is a local team.
Yeah.
And then we've obviously done a lot of regional, and we will continue to do regional chef collaborations that are super fun. So.
I still feel like there's more to unpack with the human element, but I want to save that for maybe the next conversation because I want to respect your time.
Episode 1100.
Yeah, because we're over an hour and a half. We still got the speed round, and I have to ask you the last question I've been asking all my guests.
Okay.
This is a new question I ask all my guests. The mission statement is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. So how have you transformed? Who are you today versus the man you were back in 2005 when you got your start with Mendocino Farms?
Interesting.
Aside from being retired.
Yeah, no. Look, I think that the transformation for me has been, largely personal, and then I would say, hopefully helped influence, Mendocino Farms brand, personal, and I think that you have to have a certain amount of bravado and ego to want to create, something, new. If anything, my transformation, I've learned a lot of humility. I've had a lot of time to reflect on ways to do things better. I think that I've definitely gone to a place where I understand how I can be a positive influence on the team around me and teams that I invest in and advise for, and kind of know my know the best what my unique value or I guess unique things that I bring to the table, and how to apply them and help them influence the group in a positive way. Now, as far as transformation with the brand, which I go back to, I give credit that I think that Ellen and I have been really good at curating the team, hiring the right people, and being good students of the business. But, I think there's been massive transformation. I think that Mendo has been one of the thought leaders with regards to supply chain. I think we've been one of the thought leaders around how to coach our team. I think we've been one of, I think we've been an inspiration for a lot of brands. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I mean that like in a meaningful way. I think that hopefully that if anyone's observed or come to a Mendo and it's inspired them to have a greater hospitality experience within their four walls, the ripple effects that's affected their guests or affected them in a good way, I think is things we can be proud of. And I think that there's still, areas that I look at that I want to disrupt. I think there's I truly believe that there are so many incredible creative chefs and founders that have something really important to share with the world to help give them better structure. I think that's kind of when I think about the next chapter. I think there's a huge opportunity to disrupt in the CPG space around grocery.
Yep.
And really bring both, grocery for that matter.
What do you mean by CPG, real quick?
Consumer product goods.
Okay.
CPG.
CPG. Thank you.
Yeah. But there's products. If I walk in and the best salad dressing at my high-end grocery store is, and no bash, to Olive Garden, is Olive Garden. I mean, the mere fact that, a chopped salad dressing, isn't available right now. And I think through the relationships that I've been able to forge, that we can bring a certain level of craveability into people's homes, not just through third-party delivery, but through grocery. And I think that
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Leveraging your relationships with chefs to give them other verticals to create and to get their products in front of other people. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity for me to be able to provide that structure.
Nice.
For some of these these great creative chefs. And I think there's
Are you looking for people? Because I can have a call to action for you.
Send them my way. Send them my way for sure. But and again, I think there's a really neat place for the restaurant industry to help evolve and create a revolution in grocery. Groceries, is going through a reckoning in a post-Amazon world, right? And the idea that we can create more of an experiential experience in those big boxes. And to bring some of those pieces and to bring a greater craveability. So again, I go back to, I think there's some really transformational opportunities, and as I sit before you, I think kind of the more interesting days are ahead. Yeah, and I'm excited about it.
It is exciting, and man, I've loved this free flowing portion of the conversation. You've been a great guest. One more quick break to thank our sponsors, and we'll bust out a true speed round. This episode brought to you by MarginEdge. Never deal with a paperwork nightmare again. All right, we're back. And the first question I have for you, and I've asked you these questions before. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read the answer, and you're going to tell me if that's still the case.
Okay. Yeah, good.
What is your it factor, a habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success? You said inspiring others. Is that still the case?
Yes, I would add just one added layer, right? And
Please.
I think that it's not just inspiring others, but helping give them additional context and maybe additional grit. I think because now I've gone through more challenges and had to go up more hills.
Say empowering, maybe
that's helped inform that I can provide not just a raw speech, but more a shared experience that can help a lot of the people around me maybe find their own inspiration, which I think is more powerful than giving them their inspiration, letting them find it for themselves.
I like that. Yeah. What is your biggest weakness? You said not paying attention to the downside.
Wow, I did. I said that.
Yeah.
As my co-founder Ellen, would constantly say is that I just do all the fun stuff.
I feel that.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably not as accurate, anymore. I think I now do
learned?
look. Maybe I've learned.
Maybe that was a little
Yeah,
close at the moment.
There's a little naivete, I think, attached to that.
So what is your biggest weakness today?
I think my biggest weakness today is focus. I think I'm excited about so many things. I've been reading this book, Essentialism.
Okay.
And Deep Work.
That's
two other good books.
Yeah.
But now is focus. But arguably, I've had enough downside that I actually pay a lot of attention to that.
What is one question you ask or thing you look for during the interview process? The first time I asked you this question, you said asking about their coaching styles.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
It's for sure one of the questions that I still use. One of the other questions that I really like to bring up, particularly if I'm hiring general managers, which, by the way, I haven't technically done a general manager interview in a very long time, but one of my go-to questions is tell me about the last time that you hosted people over at your house, and let them kind of like run through and take me through that time. And if I see a glimmer and excitement that they like having people over, and I see a care and a thoughtfulness. It doesn't have to be like, it could literally have been like a barbecue with hot dogs. It doesn't have to be like this incredible food, but to actually more see their body language and how they answer that, and that they're really people that in their heart of hearts like taking care of others.
Yes.
And it's a way they express love. I think that's probably one of the best indicators. Now I've given it away, so anyone that ever interviews with me will be completely ready. Wait, when is he going to ask me that question? Yeah, but I think it's a great question.
It is a great question. Yeah. I'm just thinking about my answer to that question as you go through it. So I like that answer or that question.
Yeah.
What's your current challenge today? What's your biggest challenge today? How are you dealing with it?
Look, I think the biggest challenge that I have in this phase, in my life is goes back to the last one. Is I think that there's so many things that are interesting, and I think there's so many people and individuals and groups that are interesting to work with, and it's really come down to surrounding myself, with people that I'm inspired by. And I think that add massive value to me, and likewise, I can provide the same kind of complement to what they're doing. So my greatest challenge is what's the next team? Not necessarily that I'm going to build, but what's the next team that I'm going to be on?
Okay.
And it's an interesting time in my life because I kind of have a pretty good context of I think the people that I want to surround myself with. And to try to do even bigger and greater things.
Yeah, I think this question is relative to no matter where you are in your path, though, because you're the average of those you surround yourself with, right? So no matter where you are, who can I be around with?
Well, I've always told managers that either work for us or managers that have sought out, or even for that matter, very senior people, not just managers, that have sought out wisdom of like, where should I work? And I've always told them, like, whatever you're doing, if you're like, in your growth in your career, don't seek whoever's paying you the most.
Yes.
Seek the opportunity to work with the best people, and inevitably, like, great things are going to happen.
And it's super evident that you've been doing this your entire career, because you're talking about your friends with Tender Greens, and Sweet Greens, and Nick Marsh with Chopped. Just find the people that are doing what you want to do, or who are doing the same thing as you, and surround yourself with them. The ones that you would think are your competitors, and do it together, because it's lonely at the top. And it happens in waves. That's another thing I wanted to mention earlier. You don't have to go to, if you're just getting started, you don't have to go to the best. Go to the others who are just getting started, right? Who are doing the same thing that you're doing, and come up together. And you'll come up. So you go, you go faster alone, further together. Is that the quote, right?
Listen, Eric, your quote, not mine, but I like it.
But the first time I asked you that question, what your biggest challenge was, you said, not watering down your whys. I forgot to read that, so I apologize.
Oh yeah, no, it's interesting. Over the course of the last few years, we for sure have spent an enormous amount of time codifying why we exist.
Yeah.
Right.
So much for a speed round, huh?
Yeah. It's very
I'm
slow.
fine with it, but
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah.
Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team the first time. You said selling happiness. Don't do standard food, and living a higher purpose of creating transformative relationships. You want to stick with those?
Wow, that was wordy of me. I feel it'd be offensive to add anything more to that.
What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your staff? You said, can I make some talking room for you? Do you want to stick with that?
A comment that we give, for staff. Yeah, that was a busing term, that we give, to make sure people know that we're
My
trying to
listeners
create a
should go back
gathering.
to 414 and they can get the full answer.
All right. Well, it's a gathering place, but I actually think that it is really powerful if you're going to take a nugget, from this. So you're just not hearing, like my nonsense, but that actually creating semantics and phrases that help define you as a brand. And what I say is we've been very particular on how to differentiate our fast casual versus a lot of fast casuals that take more inspiration from fast food than casual dining. And we take far more inspiration from casual dining. And how do you become a server when taking someone's order rather than an order taker, right? And so often it's like, what would you like? Which is a very fast food experience. So I share this because in so many different of these points of contact, that's what we call, instead of steps of service, we call them points of contact. It's moments that you're interacting with our team. At each one of these points of contact, what are certain phrases that help define you as a brand, right? So one of those things that we're trying to define at host, or the person that is like quote unquote taking your order, right, is that they be a facilitator.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
So how do they facilitate the menu? How do they craft the menu for the guest? Not just like, let me tell you what's most popular, right?
What do you like?
Like, yes.
And I can say this because I went into
Oh,
Mendocino Farms yesterday.
and they asked it.
Incognito.
And they asked it.
Yes. And
See?
I was waiting to share. I was going to share this at the very end because so many times I interview people and they say they're a certain way.
Yeah.
I won't say who's not going to.
Okay.
But
I give more credit to
you
Steve
live
Mincer
up-
that people still say that.
You live up to it though. And I went in and you have somebody standing with an iPad or I don't know what server. I think you guys are using Aloha.
Yeah.
Standing with an Aloha tablet and smiling. Wait, I'm like, oh, this is awkward. Like I'm not even in the door yet, and you're already ready. And then she took me through, and it wasn't a normal experience. It was a very customizable. She's like, well, what do you like? Do you like spicy? Do you like?
There you go. Right?
And I told her yes. I kind of threw her a curveball. She's like, do you like spicy? Do you like salads? Do you like? I think meat was maybe the other one she might have asked me, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And then she was like, oh, that's not a common answer. But she handled it really well. And she guided me through the whole way. And during the first interview, you said that it's almost like they want to date you, right? When people walk in the door, if they're looking to join your team, it's not like, oh, go stand in the corner. It's like, but that warmth, that love, that happiness is there. And I experienced it firsthand. So I just want to put emphasis on that. I'm selling your
there you go. So you experienced it. So we created like certain phrases.
Yeah.
They get to choose. But there are phrases around sending you, the guest, a message that I'm a facilitator and I'm going to craft this experience particular to you.
Yeah,
right?
I love it, man.
And and we have those kind of phrases throughout, the experience that you have at a Mendo. And I go back to it. If you're going to pull a nugget, I highly encourage, whether you're a full service restaurant or a fast casual or even a QSR, that you create these semantics, because again, we go back to culture. Culture is a way of speaking, right? That helps define.
Yeah.
It's a way a group speaks, and it's rituals a group practices.
Yeah, I can't help but I have to add this onto it, but this touching points, is that what you call them, right?
Points of contact.
Points of contact.
Yeah.
It reminds me so much of Zappos. Is it Tony Hsieh?
Tony Hsieh.
In his book, Delivering Happiness.
Yes.
He talks about how they design their physical spaces that people are forced to bump up against each other.
Yes.
And I just can't help but think of that. So, I mean, if you want to get into the science behind why points of contact is a better approach to this, then read that book. And the next question is around books. You've already mentioned a bunch in this interview. Maybe I can let you regurgitate those. But last time you were on the show, you recommended Fundamentals, 9 Ways to be brilliant at the New Basics. Setting the Table, obviously the number one most recommended on the show. The Fred Factor, how passionate.
Which, by the way, should be. I actually for years taught a setting the table class to my
really?
managers.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think most people get distracted. Like Danny Myers is a genius in the space. The first half of the book, is really telling you his experience. It's interesting, but you need to go back in the last half. You need to continue to read over quarterly, right? Like the first half, like get it. It's
my
really
story. Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
His story.
Yeah.
But then when you start learning the fundamentals of creating enlightened hospitality,
Yeah.
I highly recommend for any senior level executive, founder, general manager, assistant manager, continue to go back to the last half of setting the table.
Yes. You also mentioned the Fred factor, which you can listen to in an hour and a half in fast forward mode. I did it during a bike ride.
Strong. It's a short book.
Yeah,
There's no excuse.
It's impactful.
There's no excuse to not read the Fred factor.
And then conscious capitalism, liberating the heroic spirit of business. And you mentioned, we'll add the two that you mentioned before.
Talent is overrated with Jeff Colvin.
Yep. Going deep.
Yeah. Deep Work.
Deep Work, yeah.
Essentialism, also great book. And then, a couple other Raving Fans.
Yes.
Ken Blanchard.
You guys got your
Sheldon,
homework cut
Sheldon
out for you
Bowles.
listening to this. You got books for months.
But Raving Fans, and it's written with a really interesting prose. It's not like your typical book.
Yeah.
It's like you're kind of in this fantasy, but they're visiting different businesses, and they're creating this unbelievably differentiated hospitality experience. And in fact, at one piece, they're dealing with a taxi cab driver, and this book was written far before Uber or Lyft was even created. And it's taking pieces. It really is futuristic.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Well, history repeats itself.
So I highly recommend Raving Fans. It's must reading with all of our management team. And then come this fall, the Coaching Cure.
Yeah, and maybe
with Scott Greenberg and Mario Del Perro.
Get that.
Do you like the shameless plug?
No,
you just had me for an hour and a half. I might as well plug.
No, man, I know. Well, I look to Joe Rogan when I think about long podcast episodes. Yeah. And one thing we learn about hospitality and food in general, it's not like some good things take time. You know what I'm saying? And this has been a great interview. So thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Eric, it's been great.
So all these books, I'm pretty sure are on Audible. So head over to audibletrial.com/unstoppable. If you are not using Audible already, it will change your life. And you're thinking to yourself, how many books were just recommended? There's no way I can get through all these books. Yeah. I promise you, with Audible, you can get through all those books in at least a month's time. It makes it possible for busy people to educate themselves. So look into it. Please use my links. Thank you in advance. What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough? This is a new question.
Yeah, it is. Nice. Well enough or often enough? Again, I think that a lot of restaurateurs, a lot of my peers, have some mild success and really rest on their laurels. And I think don't stay hungry and don't continue to want to innovate and don't continue to want to reinvent themselves and create something even more special. And inevitably what happens is mediocrity affects everyone. And I don't wish it on any of my fellow restaurateurs. But I see a malaise often, in brands that I actually really respected. So I think that that's probably the biggest miss. And then the flip side of that question is, we continue to see these brands that are breaking all the rules. It's almost like if you took the old restaurant playbook, and I've said this quote, I've now been in the restaurant business over 20 years, right? And I've seen more evolution in the last 3 than I saw in the 17 prior.
I think it's because of resources like this. Knowledge and information is traveling faster than ever before.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I think that the fact that there's so many a lot of the old playbooks are getting thrown out.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's just change for change.
Yeah.
I think it's change because change was due. And the fact that if you're not taking the time to listen to to podcasts like this, and even hopefully there was a nugget here and there.
Oh my gosh.
But hopefully as when I think about how many thought leaders that we have out there to continue to find these nuggets and allow them to inspire what you're doing and help transform what you're doing. See, that was plugging your I think is critical. And those brands are the ones that are going to continue to not just succeed, but continue to push the rest of the industry.
I love it, man. So I still got 2 more questions for you. 3 more questions, but they're going to be quick ones. Name one service you've hired. So this is like either a design or consulting or I don't know, a person that you've outsourced to take your business kind of greater. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Michael Antoci, from a supply chain standpoint, he actually was introduced to us by Eric at Tender Greens.
Nice.
His brother is the one that actually is like brought Erewhon to where it is today and owns it, Tony Antoci. So Michael Antoci is a third party, basically vendor purchasing consultant for us.
You know the name
He's
of his
also
business?
a farmer himself.
Oh, wow.
He's the guy that owns Pachamama Farms up in Oregon.
Okay.
So he's actually running a sustainable pig farm.
Nice.
And if you've seen some of our Pachamama specials, is often because he's like overraised too many pigs, and we've had to like create a sandwich to help him out. But not only does he get it as a farmer, but he really understands. He's taken an enormous amount of time, years to go deep into our brand. He's traveled with us. He's probably one of the most curious human beings on the planet. He's definitely cut from a different cloth. So those of you that know him and don't like him, he's a unique soul. But I'll tell you what, his passion for our brand, his love of the vendors that we've shared with him, that we love, is palpable. I mean, he's been an incredible partner. Even though he's a third party resource, he really has been a partner.
That's how you
helped
should
us
treat
scale
those
our
third
brand.
party. They should be treated as resources. I fully
So I would say Michael Antoci, but there's so many great architects. Like Mendo. One of our big things is we want to throw out trade dress.
What's
right?
that?
Trade dress is like if I walk into a McDonald's, they all look like McDonald's. Even though now I think McDonald's is actually breaking some of those rules and trying to make
the market's forcing them back into a more soulful way.
People like the consistency of the menu, but they continue to want to have these environments innovated. So we've worked with some awesome Michael Shu's team. Nicolo, Valerio, incredible architects. So I mean, there's been so many that have helped influence the Mendo brand and created these buildings that, while they have the same menu, uniquely reflect the neighborhood.
I love it.
Right?
I love it. And I will link to these people and these services in the show notes as well. And then last time I asked you about a technology, you said Wisetail. What technology are you leveraging today that has you really excited?
I mean, probably the most exciting technology that I'm kind of geeking towards is, I think that we're moving from it's probably 2. Sorry, I can't narrow. One is I think we're moving towards payment.
Okay.
Where you're not even gonna have to get out your phone, and it's gonna be done through facial recognition.
Oh yeah.
And not only are they gonna be able to pay through facial recognition, but like immediately identified, and like what your likes and dislikes. And then, and as creepy as it is, I mean, we're already allowing our phones to unlock, right, for us. But I think that that Face Pay is around the corner.
Yeah. Is there a service in general that you're identifying that's doing this well?
I think there will be.
Okay.
Right. And then likewise, I think this idea of virtual drive-throughs. I think this using geofencing technology and allowing a restaurant that it might be in line, right?
Okay.
To be able to now through technology to have a virtual drive-through.
Okay.
So when the person enters, which is beyond like a curbside function where you just or you go to a parking space and you call a number, or you go to a parking space and you're identified, but literally going to like a busy shopping mall and we know when your car entered, and to be able to have that.
And like having a queue on like display on your POS so you can see
100%.
like Johnny, what's going on.
So there's incredible technology flyby that exists that I think is groundbreaking, and I couldn't be more excited. I mean, think about the impact what the drive-through did for the QSR world, 1950s. Right. And think about the influence it can have now to fast, particularly to fast casual.
Yeah. That's like the next step of data for sure. Are there any particular companies that are working on this?
Flyby
is the name of it?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. It's incredible. Incredible group of guys.
Thank you.
And they're doing really good work. And I think it's groundbreaking.
All right, this is the last question.
Okay.
I don't think you got it the first time. I think it might be.
I didn't get it. Like I got it wrong.
Well, I don't think
you didn't give it to me.
Well, let me double check. I don't know if this is relatively new. Actually, no, you did get this one. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right.
It was around this time that I started asking this.
But it just wasn't a really good answer. So,
update. So the last time I asked, the question is: if you had the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be? Your answer to that was: be a student of life. I think that hasn't changed. Seek out mentorship and start with your whys. Do you stand by that?
I'm going to stand by those.
Nice.
For sure.
Nice.
I'd obviously been more prepared. That was pretty.
You've been an incredible
but
guest.
I'll go ahead and stick with those 3.
Nearly
sure.
2 hours, or maybe over 2 hours of recording, and I just longer than usual. But you were willing and generous with your time, so thank you so much. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. So who's one person you respect and admire? You've already mentioned a handful during this conversation.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's
Is there one or two that come to mind that I should get on the show?
Yeah, I think that there's a few. I think Tony Owen is doing some incredible investments in the restaurant space and is working with a lot of founders. I think he's an incredible person for you to seek out. Likewise, I would definitely go back to Nick Marsh.
Yes,
because I think he's doing some super cutting edge stuff with Founders Table, and I think that's really worthy of going deeper, on what Nick is accomplishing or actually aspirationally has set out.
That's interesting.
It's groundbreaking.
So that was Tony, Nick.
Yeah,
and
I would actually go. I would seek out a Donald Moore at Cheesecake Factory. He's one of the wiser people in the restaurant space. Definitely one of the greatest students.
Yeah,
it's someone I continually. While he's both a peer, I consider him also a mentor.
I love it.
I would seek him out as well.
So Tony,
and then I said you should go. You definitely want to talk to Kimball Musk.
Yes,
Kimball's got some interesting, revolutionary ideas around food and food accessibility.
All right, look out, fellas! I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. Thank you. And the only other thing I want to do before we say goodbye is I want to leave this episode with how we started the first episode, which was giving a nod to Chris Dimmick. So, but most importantly, I want to give a nod to you, because I want to appreciate him. Because
nice. See how you made that full circle. That was well done.
So Chris just opened his first restaurant.
Yeah.
And when I told Chris that I was, because Chris first put you on my radar. And
so
you gotta get on the show. And I listened to him, and I got you on the show, and I messaged him last night saying I'm getting Mario back on the show, and we started talking. I knew he was opening his restaurant, and I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate you for being what most of us should be doing in our careers and our businesses, which is giving other people the tools and the inspiration and the ability to go on and do their own thing. And he's doing it, and you had a huge impact. He told me personally that you had a huge impact in the man he is today, in shaping and forming the man he is today. And we need more people like you doing that. So I want to acknowledge you and make an example of you in this moment, because that was pretty rad to see that all kind of come full circle.
That's very kind. Yeah. Very kind that you said that. Very kind that you shared it, and I'm humbled.
Great. So thank you again for taking the time to come join us.
No, I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's important.
Yeah, and the last time you shared your contact information is it's you gave your email. So can I say
Yeah. Well, and honestly, because I don't check that email as much. My email now that's best is Mario, MARIO _ Del Pero, DELPERO @yahoo.com. That's just my everyday.
Got it. And maybe you're a chef out there who has badass products. Maybe use that email.
Reach out.
Okay, I have to say it. There is no questioning, Mario. You are unstoppable.
Well, thanks, Eric.
My pleasure.